we have two theists now on the line, and we have an atheist caller as well. So I'm going to stick you with Lemon, our first of the theist callers. Pronouns he, him, from the United States. He wants to make his case for God. I think that's a lofty promise. I'm excited to hear it, and I'm going to let you hear the beginning while I get some more water and pee.
All right.
So, Lemon, you are on the Sunday show. How are you? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Lemon, yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Wonderful. I'm going to leave with you, Paul, for a minute and get some more water.
Hey, Lemon.
Hello?
Hey,
How you doing? Is
what
there
do
a
you got
delay?
for us today? There might be it's possible, so I'll try not to step on you, but I can hear you, and I would love to hear your case for God or whatever it is that you wanted to call today.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the title of the video, the live stream, talking about
Okay.
the question of seeking the existence, if a God exists or not. That's the topic of the day, right?
Oh, we let the callers kind of drive the topic, but that was a suggestion, and it's something I would love to discuss with you.
Okay. Yeah, so I thought maybe I could jump on,
Please do.
say my thoughts and so on. So I guess I'll just say, first of all, I'm a Muslim,
Okay.
and I guess a question that I would like to ask you first of all, to start off, would you say that the existence of God is possible? Is it a possibility?
It depends on which God you are talking about. So if you want to say, is it
I'll tell you
possible that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you the description of God in the Islamic belief, and then that will put the foundation for that.
Go ahead. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So in the Islamic belief, God, which is derived from the Quran, the Quran is believed to be the word of God. So God was the one who authored the Quran. He's the one talking in it. He's the one that's saying all the stuff in it. And so he's describing himself, and he's saying certain attributes about himself. So, for example, chapter 112 of the Quran says, "Say God is one, and He's self-sufficient, independent. He's neither does not beget or neither begotten, and nothing can be comparable to Him." So, if you can imagine something, nothing is like unto Him. For example, essential. So that is like the basic core attributes or belief in God in Islam.
Okay, so you're essentially asking me if it's possible that there exists something that we can't compare anything to, and that is very powerful. Is that essentially
in our experience?
Yeah. So
something that
I
we
would
see in
grant,
our experience cannot be comparable.
right. So given that you haven't given it any omni properties, or you haven't given it any desire to communicate or anything like that, then I would say I can't say that such a thing is impossible. I would grant that
Okay.
that is logically possible for such a thing to exist. Sure.
So I'll say that I should add also on that, because I was presupposing that the definition of God, which is basically, or like I guess the basic definition of God, how I know it, is like an entity that is all powerful, eternal, and has a will to do something. And yes, in the Islamic belief, we believe that God communicated, I guess, with humans through the way of prophets. So yeah, you can add that as well to the question.
Okay. Well, now you're adding qualifiers that I'm not as certain can be possible, because I would have to suss out exactly what some of those things would mean. I'm assuming by all powerful, for example, you mean only things that are logically possible. That's if I'm being charitable, that you're not saying that
Yes.
for example, and what else did you say? I don't think if it wants to like that it did communicate
eternal.
That it did communicate with us, for example, is a strict. Now all of a sudden that I'm not as convinced.
No,
Are you saying it's possible for such a God to communicate to us? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible?
It's possible for such. I would imagine that it is possible for such a being to communicate with us. I am not on board that it necessarily has, but okay.
Okay,
All right, are we leading somewhere?
so yeah, so I wanted to know if, like, for example, the way I understand is, like, if you're an atheist, then you like, can you leave a room for uncertainty? Like, for example, there's no evidence to say for God, but even if there's, like, evidence that you would take that would say the opposite, that wouldn't make you
Absolutely.
reach a
Yeah, no,
100% certainty.
I, I think that would be. I don't think anyone is 100% certain about anything other than the content of their own
Yeah.
thoughts. Outside of the content of your own thoughts,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think that you're all just at a level of certainty. And so I am, and that's part of the reason I hang out here on this channel, is that one day perhaps I will be given evidence to show me that I should be believing in a God. So absolutely, I'm ready.
Got it. Okay. So
Let's hear it.
I would say that the evidence, or like the proof, I guess, can be set up from both sides of, I guess, both sides of the argument. What I mean by both sides is, like, attempting to prove God, say for example, from first principles, or, for example, like, you're trying to prove God using a cosmological argument or whatever to reach that conclusion. And I would say that you can also go about it from the other side, which is from, like, for example, in the Islamic belief, if you're a Muslim, or if you're, like, analyzing Islam, for example, so Islam has the revelation, which is the Quran, right? And so if you can prove that the Quran is saying the truth, or, like, the Quran is truthful about what it says, and if the Quran is truthful, and the Quran says that there is a God, then that follows that God exists. Which say that
So
is, like, a
which of
reasonable
those,
logical argument.
yeah, just I need to know which of those two paths do you want to concentrate on? Do you want to concentrate on the cosmological
The
part or the
second one,
revelation?
the latter.
Do you want to concentrate on the revelation? Okay.
The latter.
All right. So would you agree that there are works of literature, or works of, there are textbooks out there, for example, that are correct about some things and simultaneously incorrect about other things?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you understand that if you demonstrate to me, for example, that the Quran is correct about a handful of things, or even if it's hundreds of things, that doesn't mean that it is necessarily correct about its miraculous claims.
Because there might be things that are incorrect in it.
Yeah, because there are degrees of correctness.
What do you mean by degrees of correctness?
Well, first of all, there's degrees of correctness in terms of saying it's hot in here is maybe less correct than saying, oh, it's 28 degrees Celsius in here, or, for example, or something like that, right? So that's a degree of correctness. But there's also, I can say that I have a black dog is kind of correct. I have a dog that some of her is black and some of her is brown and some of her is white. And even less correct might be say that I have a black pig when I don't own any pig whatsoever. So, right, these are just like you can, even within a statement, there are some parts that can be true and some parts can be false. That's all I mean.
Okay, but I guess if you're specific, right? You're being specific, and you say my dog is all black, and if your dog is not all black, then that would be false. That would be a false
Okay,
statement.
so
That
yeah,
cannot
absolutely. No,
be
let's say,
somewhat true.
let me just, but let me be more clear about what it. So I actually have a beagle, which is fine. So let me say I have a beagle, and I am 12 feet tall. The fact that I do have a beagle doesn't affirm the other part of my statement that I'm 12 feet tall. The fact that I got part of one statement correct doesn't impact the other statement that I've made. Would you agree with that?
Can the other statement be falsified? Can the other statement be falsified?
Potentially, but I'm just saying that
if you're not 12 feet tall, then
and
that
actually,
would be false.
I'm now fascinated about how we're going to falsify Islam. But let me just answer your question. But all I wanted to say was, if you want to prove that the Quran is correct, you've actually hit upon something. every individual discrete claim would need to be falsifiable and demonstrated. So if we want to reduce it down to that Allah exists, for example, the fact anything else that the Quran gets correct in history doesn't affect the existence of Allah specifically. So is it a falsifiable claim that Allah exists?
What would you
I'm just asking if Allah is
would
a
you say yes for
falsifiable
that or
claim.
no?
I don't.
No, I
Well,
mean, I
I'm
would
not the
say,
one defining Allah, so I'm. It's not for me to say.
yeah, I mean, I guess, I suppose, by the whatever definition that the Quran puts for Allah, right?
Mhm.
If you can, if you have two states, you either know for a fact that Allah doesn't exist, or you're unsure, right? I guess three states: unsure, uncertain. You say you would be convinced of something that would tell you that it doesn't exist, or maybe he does. You don't have a complete certainty, or
Okay,
I
but
guess
that's
it's like
unrelated to
some sort of
the
empirical
truth of the matter, right? That's just
evidence.
my confidence level. You're just describing confidence levels at this point, right? Like, and that doesn't actually affect the
No,
truth
I'm
of
saying,
a statement.
yeah, the truth of a statement, I guess, like that, if a statement can be falsified,
Mhm.
then the falsification process that would lead to a conclusion that the statement cannot be on any shadow of a doubt be true, then that would be, that would be something. The Quran says something like that, then the Quran would be false. But if the Quran makes truthful statements and makes statements that you cannot falsify, then you cannot say that the Quran made a false statement, because you cannot prove that and reach that conclusion.
What do you think falsifiable means?
I guess if if you're making a specific claim about
Mhm.
something, and your experiences that you've been having so far, like, for example, that if you drop something, it's gonna drop. Your experience of it, that's true, and so therefore, using your experiences, you would come to the conclusions. Like, for example, there are things that you cannot prove. You have to presuppose, like rationality and otherwise, right? So with certain things, you have to use your experiences of your reality. If you can make the assertion that this, based on my experiences, this is what's going to happen, this is the
Okay.
truth, then something that
So
comes out, and said
so
otherwise.
Lemon, we're
Yeah.
using falsification slightly. I just want to make note for you that we're using falsification slightly differently. So when I'm saying something is falsifiable, I mean that there is hypothetically a condition under which we can definitively say something is false. You gave some examples of things that we presuppose, like the reliability of our senses, for example, or I forget what I think. Just real, like we do absolutely have some things that we call our axiomatic, but we deliberately say the axiomatic things aren't falsifiable, right? So, but I wanted to know if Allah is such a thing that is there's a hypothetically some piece of information that we could get and then to say, oh no, that the hypothesis of Allah has been falsified. Is Are we using it the same way?
Okay, I guess if I understand it correctly, then the answer to that would be no. You cannot reach, because, like, what are the tools that you have? I guess all the tools that we have for examining things are, you can use like rationality, logic, math, I guess, and then you can use the scientific method, and all, like, and I guess if you would attempt to prove God using a scientific method, it will be like a foolish endeavor, because you're examining a tool, you're using a tool that examines the physical
Right.
world to try
Yeah,
to prove or
exactly.
falsify something that is not physical. And so,
And
based on
so,
that, there's no tools available to falsify that. And yeah.
yeah, awesome. So we're in agreement that that Allah, as at least has been described to me, or people have attempted to describe to me, is not a falsifiable claim. and therefore is not actually a
Yeah,
hypothesis that I'm
Allah is
particularly
not.
interested in. Like, and this
Well,
might be a
okay.
character fault.
I'll try
This might be
to.
a character fault in me, but unless a claim is falsifiable, then to me it actually
Yeah,
isn't of no use, right? Because it doesn't make useful predictions, or I am not in a position
yeah,
just because of my existence. Anyway, it seems like you understand where I was going with that, so I will let you continue.
yeah, yeah. I will say I wanted. Actually, maybe I should like. I guess the thought that came to me right now is that if you there are many religions, I guess, and many of them have different descriptions of God. And so you would say, as Muslims, that you can't obviously can't use the scientific method to discern whether this claim that this religion is making is true, unless you know, I guess, yeah, maybe not, but I guess you would be able to use logic and rationality to discern, or make an assertion of falsification or otherwise. Yeah, I suppose in that way it can be falsifiable if the claim about God is illogical.
So, is there a claim about Allah that is falsifiable?
No, I mean, I would say you're talking about Allah as in the God in Islam, right?
That
Not God in
yes, and I
general.
hope and pardon me if I'm using it incorrectly. I'm hoping I'm using it in the way that you, and thank you for your grace with me for in case I get it wrong. But yes, I'm saying the God as you understand it, which
Yeah.
Allah or God as you understand it, is it
Hmm.
falsifiable? Is there a claim about it that's falsifiable that would let me know whether it's true or not? And it sounds like you're saying no.
Yeah. Not. It's logically consistent. If this was, if you wanna say your intuition, I guess. Yeah. So you can't falsify it, but I would say that if, yeah, like I would say, I suppose that with a high degree, I guess with a high degree of confidence, or I guess at least like as humans, if you wanna say you're looking for the truth, and you're like, okay, well, there's many claims out there, you can dismiss all illogical claims and leave the logical ones, and then you can go from there.
So then that brings us, I guess, then to I think it sounds like you've given up on the revelation side of this equation, and you are
What do you mean?
now shifting. Well, so I was wondering if there was something you said you specifically wanted to focus on the revelation, the Quran part of it, and I
Correct?
wanted to let you know that as far as I can tell, every document in existence has some parts that are true and some parts that are false, and that the number that it
Okay.
gets 99 things true and one wrong doesn't, like, the stats don't really specifically matter. Each one has to be evaluated on its own, and you seem to agree with that. And so then I focused in on, well, let's talk about the existence of Allah part and not worry about whether anything else in the Quran can be verified. And you said, okay, but that the Allah part was not falsifiable. So I guess to me that inferred that perhaps you were done talking about the revelation side. Did you have something else to add on the revelation side?
No, I was the way that I'm going about this, I guess, is yeah, you're saying that if something, you're saying that if this literature has some percentage of truthfulness, some percentage of falsehood,
Hmm.
then that was false, right? How
Right.
is the inability to falsify something make it, I guess, put it in the category of falsehood?
So I think I hope I was clear about this before. It doesn't mean just because something is unfalsifiable doesn't mean that it is false. What it merely means is I then do not have access in my limited human existence and tools to evaluate it, and therefore it is not something that is worth my time, right? Like it's if something is if I can't falsify it, it absolutely could be true. So, for example, there's the classic, is there a teapot orbiting? Is there a teapot orbiting the Earth? I have no way to say there absolutely is not a teapot orbiting the Earth. But so it's an unfalsifiable claim. So then it's like, well, okay, well, and then it's why am I asking the question? Now it is,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, you could obviously prove it by pointing my telescope to a teapot. That's one thing, but it's not a falsifiable claim. So I feel like most God claims that I'm given are absolutely in that category of, well, maybe they're true, and there's lots of you could demonstrate that they're true, but until you can demonstrate a way that they're false, it's kind of like this weird theory that is unrelated to my life. And that might be a character flaw in me. It absolutely might be, and I'm open to you explaining why that would be a character flaw. But that's just personally where I'm at.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say, like if I mean, the way you put it, right? If somebody comes in and says 99 things, and those 99 things are true, one of them, those things is could be true, could be false, but you cannot determine it. Then,
Right.
I mean, I would, like I guess from like many, I guess I would say from many perspectives, it would be foolish almost to say that is, oh, because that is the case, then all of it is, all of it is meaningless to me at this point. And from a probability perspective as well, and as well as from like like for example, if I, I don't know, like if for example, if I'm if you're both in a test and you're cheating off of me and giving you answers, and you're like, okay, this seems right, this seems right, this seems right. Okay, that one I can't verify, but he's right in all these cases. He's probably right in this one. It would be foolish
Well, it depends on
to pick the
no,
answer
but
that is opposite.
oh, I'm not. I hope I'm not saying that I assume the opposite. But obviously, it's the nature of the claim, right? So my mother, whom I'm only in my all my years, I've only aware of one lie that my mother told me. She told me there was no eggs in quiche, and there absolutely are eggs in quiche. That's the only lie I'm aware that she told me in my whole life. But if my mother comes to me and says, "I saw a space alien," am I justified because the vast majority of times she tells me the truth? Am I justified based on that testimony in believing in space aliens?
I suppose. I guess that is a little bit. I mean, I don't know. That feels like an analogy that is much more extreme, I would
But
say.
no, but it was
If I'm
deliberately
saying,
extreme. It was deliberately extreme just to point out that perhaps there's a spectrum here, right? That perhaps that the nature of the claim is an important part of the consideration. It was it was deliberately extreme for that purpose, so that just to illustrate the nature of the claim is absolutely there. So if 99 times my colleague, you know, goes to the gym and they told me they went to the gym of that 100th time, you're right. I'm not yeah, I'm probably reasonably justified in saying that hey, yeah, he probably went to the gym even though he may have lied to me and he did something else. I was still reasonably justified. Sure. But that's why I threw in the space alien thing was to say the nature of the claim is part of it. And that's what I'm trying to say with the Quran, that you can show me 99 mundane details that are correct, gives me no basis to verify something more significant, like that perhaps it was that an angel revealed this to someone in a cave, right? Like that's a different level of claim.
sure, okay. So, I mean,
Does
yeah.
that, does that
So,
make sense?
and I would say, and you would, yeah, and you would agree then that I guess depends on the case that is being made. You could be swayed based on the spectrum that you would fall on. You'd at least be pushed along this spectrum and fall somewhere where you can be like, okay, this is definitely probably the case.
Right.
And then that would be like,
Now here's another
you know,
weird thing about me is that when it comes to testimony, and to me the Quran is in the category of the Bible or anything that's testimony, is more likely to be mistaken or wrong than for a miracle to be true. Now, again, this might be a flaw with my character, but I know people who are mistaken about all kinds of things. I've heard many mistaken statements in my life. I've also heard many people lying to me in my life. But I have never I've never experienced anything that could externally be verified as a miracle. So when it comes to testimony, which what the Quran is, it now has to overcome the likelihood that someone was mistaken or that someone was lying. And unfortunately, those are very high likelihoods when it comes to just statements broadly in general. So for me, someone claiming something, and this goes back to our very first caller, I don't know if you heard them, who were saying, like, this can be something self-authenticating. No, I'm going to need the external corroboration, because the testimony alone, which is the Quran is, it's testimony alone, to me is always going to be more likely mistaken or lying than correct. Do you feel like
yeah,
I am using a bad epistemology there?
I would say that, it's not, I guess, the way you describe it, maybe, it's not just, I guess the way or the things that you might come across is not like a claim about something and that thing being true to us, and then you can either use other methods of corroboration and discern if it's true or not. I suppose, the different types of things that you might be dealing with is like, like for example, the argument of like, if the Quran demonstrates, or not just the Quran, I guess, if the text or literature coming out of the Islamic faith demonstrates something that cannot be done by a man, then that follows that wherever this information came from is not from a human source. Would that be a coherent logical argument?
Potentially, because I like the way you phrase it. You didn't say therefore God. You said therefore it wouldn't be a human source. I would be curious as to know how you ruled out the nature that something couldn't be from a man. I've never had anyone coherently either tell me why something couldn't be from a man, couldn't be mistaken, couldn't be lying. So I'm open to this as a potential line. I would need it would need to be very seriously buttoned up, though, for me to put something in the category of impossibly human. Do you have something that I should consider that is impossibly human?
No, I would say one of the things he said is like, it couldn't be lying. I guess when you say it couldn't be lying, you can't, I suppose, I guess I'm trying to fit this within the example. For example, if somebody, I guess one of the types or one of the things, I suppose, is like, if the Quran or in the prophetic tradition, for example, makes a claim, or makes not a claim, makes several claims, about events that will happen. For example, you would say that, okay, if someone makes a claim of something that would happen, they could have there's a degree of probability in which case they could have guessed, or what they said is not true based on methods of verification. If the thing didn't happen, then it didn't happen. Or I guess that those are the two ways to
Well,
falsify it. And then
there are other things about prophecy, right? So you have to be able to prove, first of all, that it was clearly and demonstrably written before the event that it's supposed to have described. That is a problem
True,
you
yeah.
may be aware of with a lot of Christian Bible prophecy,
Yes.
is that it's not clearly and
True.
demonstrably written before the. So that's, you got to prove that. Then you
Yeah.
actually need to show that it is
Yeah.
clearly and demonstrably pointed to a single instance of something and not just merely be interpretive, right? Then you
Yep.
would need to show that thing also couldn't have been deliberately put into place because of the prophecy, right? So, for example, it's not
Self-fulfilling, yeah.
prophetic for me. You know, if I order a steak and then prophesy that I'm going to get a steak, well, I know there's people behind the scenes trying to make my prophecy happen. So, you know, like so
Yep.
there's a whole slew of like prophecy things. But that said, do you
Mhm.
have the thing
Yep.
that makes it? And I have other rules about prophecy that for me would take that newly relied on Christianity. But do you have a thing? Because we've been talking for a while, so I do want to kind of get to it so that we don't leave the other calls waiting too long. Do you have the thing that is in the
Yeah.
category of Paul should consider this to be not possible by humans?
Yeah, I guess the criteria that you put forward is like, you know, you're starting from a foundation or a base of humans cannot know the future. If somebody makes a claim about the future, it has to be one specific, not vague, very clear, not so self-fulfilling. It has to have been made before the event has taken place, and it has to be somewhat numerous so that you can't say they guessed it. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
would you say that if you had that, you would be very confident that the information is not coming from a human source?
Then I would put it in the category of to be impressed and to investigate further. And hopefully
Right?
that's hopefully that you would consider that a win.
Yeah, but I guess what would be considered investigation? Because you have to first be sincere. You have to go in not biased, and then do
Well, I mean,
a good amount of due diligence to reach the to try to reach
you don't
the
you don't know me,
conclusions
so
of.
there's nothing I can do to tell you that like there's nothing I could. A liar would tell you they're sincere,
Yeah,
and a sincere person
this is
would tell
not
you they're
for
sincere. So
the
there's
for the
not really
conversation.
anything I can do on this call to tell you that. But what you can do, regardless of my sincerity, is you could lay out, and perhaps maybe I am being very insincere this entire time, but there might be 1,000 people listening who are very sincere. So, for regardless of our motivations and how we're coming at it, can you give us this thing before we move on to other calls? Can you give me this thing that I should consider to be in the category of impossible for a human to do? What's your
Oh, like,
candidate?
you're saying give me examples of the prophecies.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's like numerous prophecies, so you can.
What's
I
the
guess
best
would
one?
be
What's the best,
definitely.
given that I gave you that very specific criteria, right? What's
Yeah.
the one that was like
Yep.
obviously written early, pointed to one single thing that people couldn't even been trying to make happen? What's the thing? What's the one
Mhm.
best one?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. One of the prophecies that the Prophet ﷺ said. He made a statement saying that he's talking about the deserts of Arabia. He says that the deserts of Arabia will become rivers and meadows, and become greenery again. So that's one of the statements, the claims that he made in what we call the hadith, that is available for people to see. That's one of the statements he made.
Okay. So, do you think that it was impossible for a human to have made that same prediction?
No, I would say it's only possible that it would have been a guess, but I would say that you know the I would say it fits the criteria of it being not easily predictable, because the claim itself, it doesn't just make a claim about the future, it also makes a claim about the past. So it's making double
Do you think that
information there.
do you think the
And so
green again? Do you think the green again is something that doesn't require interpretation, but that is like a very specific, like how many leaves would it have taken for it to be green again?
so he said become rivers and meadows again.
Okay. So two rivers. and one meadow, and do we like? I guess I am not super impressed by the specificity of this one.
What rivers?
I'm not super familiar
You know,
with the
like if
area,
like
so
for example,
I'm actually taking your word for it at this point that you it sounds like you saying it's already fulfilled. I will have to admit my
no, it's not.
geographical ignorance here. Go ahead.
No, it's not. It's not. I would say maybe there's evidence showing that it is starting to come true, but there's also evidence that the claim is being made about the past as well is like there's evidence for that as well. But yeah, like I said, you're saying, you know, there's some degree of vagueness, some degree of guessing there, but how much, you know, of that degree would you say, okay, you know, how much of that degree would you say you're being, I guess, you know, you're not open to the idea,
Oh,
or at
I
least
think I've said this several times.
your
I may
degree
well have
is very strict.
I may well have a huge character flaw that I am too skeptical about these things. That may well be, and that's why I've invited you to let me know where my epistemology is too cynical. But all
Yeah,
that said, having so for me, this making vague ecological predictions. You know,
yeah.
we know that regions change. You know, there's parts of the province where I live right now
How do
very
you know?
rarely used very rarely used to have hurricanes, but in in the last decade, all of a sudden there's a hurricane season, right? So should I have been impressed a decade ago that someone said, oh, it seems like we're maybe in 10 years we're going to have a hurricane season here? That seems like more of a educated guess. And also, would anyone have called them out? Like, let's say, for example, that the Quran had that prediction that one day there would be, you know, green rivers and a meadow in that region. If currently that obviously hasn't been true the entire time, so you know the people would have deferred it off and said, well, it's something that's going to be predicted in the future. Anyway, I am not Lemon. I think that because we have other calls, I should let you go. We chatted for quite a while. Uh, Erica's been very kind and just not even just letting me run with the show. Um, I hope you understand, even if you disagree that I may be too skeptical. I hope you understand that the epistemology that I laid it out clearly what my criteria might be, even if they're unfair, and that until such time as I see a prophecy that matches some of those levels, that I personally am not going to be impressed. That might be my loss, but it is just if I accepted the way you accepted it, then I would have to accept a lot of Bible prophecy as well, right? Because there's a lot of Bible prophecy that's even more specific than that I reject, and you would have to accept as well, and in other religions. So thank you for calling, Lemon. I loved this
Yeah.
conversation. I would love to have you call back in
Yeah.
again sometime, and let's maybe
Yeah.
if you do get me, I'm on twice more this week. In fact, we could talk about that first half, which is the cosmological
Yeah.
part. That would be fun to talk to you with about as well, because I appreciate
Right.
the level of thought and courtesy and grace that you extended to me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you as well. It was nice conversation. You know, I would say maybe you will find your criteria in the prophecies in some or many of the prophecies. So I would say it might be good to check them out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
I
so
will.
much, Lemon. We appreciate and call back another time.
Bye.
All right. Paul, I hope you don't mind. I took that as an opportunity to just eat hot Cheetos and play around in chat. You seem to have had a perfect handle on
I
it.